When I was reborn, the very first thing I did was secretly move my parents' grave and replace it with the ashes of a stray dog. Not only that, but I also poured manure on the grave, because in my previous life, my boyfriend's childhood sweetheart had asked to accompany him to pay respects to my parents. I thought it was a kind gesture at the time, but from that day onward, misfortune clung to me like a shadow. Meanwhile, Sierra Winthrop, seemed to ride a wave of endless good luck. She landed a top job, won $1 million lottery prize, and eventually, I died from a mysterious illness. After death, my soul lingered in the mortal world, hovering around my boyfriend. I overheard Sierra giggling softly, flirting shamelessly with him. "Thanks to your dead girlfriend," she whispered sweetly. I swapped lives with her. She had no idea how good she had it. But now that we've switched fates, everything that was hers belongs to me. Hearing those words, I had wanted nothing more than to drag them both to hell with me. But then I opened my eyes and found myself back in the past. It was the very same day Sierra asked to pay her respects to my parents. "Ivana, is this where Uncle and Auntie are buried?" she asked, her voice laced with gentle curiosity as her eyes swept over the grave. I nodded. "Yes, my parents are buried here." The moment Sierra heard that, a flicker of light passed through her eyes. She bowed gracefully before the gravestone. "My sister, Ivana Smith, may I burn some paper money for Uncle and Auntie too?" she asked. "That's exactly what I was thinking," she added with a smile. In my past life, her words touched me. But now I knew better. When she said she wanted to burn some paper, what she really meant was that she was going to steal my fortune. This time, I coldly refused. "There's no need, Sierra. These are my parents. Only I can burn paper money for them sincerely." Her expression faltered. She turned to Lucas Blackwood, my boyfriend, with a look full of wounded innocence. "Lucas, I just wanted to show my respect. I didn't mean anything else," she said softly. "Ivana," Lucas cut in, "Sierra is just being considerate. How can you refuse her like that?" I looked at the two of them and sneered inwardly. "If you're so eager to burn it, go ahead," I said, my tone cold and dismissive. The moment the words left my mouth, Sierra cast a meaningful glance at Lucas. He caught the signal and turned to me. "Ivana, how about we go buy a bouquet of flowers for Uncle and Auntie?" He had done the same thing in my previous life. While I was gone, distracted by his fake sentiment, Sierra had already finished her ritual, taking what was never hers. Back then, when I returned and asked what she had burned, she seemed flustered, but I didn't think much of it. Not until I was dead did I realize what she had truly done, stolen the fortune my parents left behind to protect me. But this time, I wouldn't stop her either. Because the people buried in this grave weren't my parents. I had already moved their remains back to our hometown. The only people my parents ever needed to protect was me. As I walked away with Lucas, I saw Sierra pull a stack of yellow paper from her chest. She had even written her birth date in her own blood. I simply smiled and pretended not to notice. I turned my back to her and left. When Lucas and I returned with the bouquet, Sierra had already completed her ritual. She took the bouquet from my hands and beamed. "Ivana, I've already asked Uncle and Auntie to bless you." I gave her a faint smile, saying nothing. But as I looked into her eyes gleaming with self-satisfaction, I couldn't help but let a knowing smile play on my lips. After parting ways with Lucas and Sierra, I headed straight to the hospital for a full medical checkup. The doctor told me I was perfectly healthy. Finally, I let out a sigh of relief. In my previous life, I had died from an unexplainable illness. But in this life, that fate would not repeat itself. When I returned home, I received a phone call. It was from the company I had always dreamed of joining, a top-secret organization at the highest level. They informed me I had passed the interview and was to report immediately. I stood frozen, shocked. In my past life, I never received this call. It was Sierra who had received an acceptance call from a major company on her way back from my parents' grave. But now, it was me. Since the company was based in another city, I immediately began packing. But just as I finished, Lucas appeared at my door. "Ivana, Sierra didn't receive her acceptance notice," he said, staring at me. She's a little upset, so I'm going to comfort her. I smiled faintly. All right. Go ahead. He studied me for a moment before asking, Ivana, have Uncle and Andy's graves always been there? I nodded, keeping my expression calm. Of course. I knew Lucas had started to suspect something. After all, the three of us had once had our fortunes told together. The fortune teller had said that I was protected by my parents' spirits, that everything I did would be met with success. That was why they had set me up in the first place. Lucas, I said, feigning pain. Do you really think I would forget where my parents are buried? He smiled awkwardly. Of course not. Then I'll go keep Sierra company, he said, turning to leave. I played the part of a concerned friend. Well, Sierra's upset, right? Go comfort her properly. Lucas paused, clearly puzzled. Ivana, didn't you always dislike me spending time with Sierra? Why are you urging me now? I smiled sweetly. It's not that I like it, but Sierra's upset. Go be with her. Then I looked him straight in the eye and added, Lucas, I trust you completely. He nodded and left. The moment he was out of sight, I packed the rest of my things and called the landlord. I told him I was checking out and that he could keep the deposit. I didn't have time to waste. Then I bought the earliest flight out and rushed to the airport. As I stepped into the terminal, I finally felt the tension leave my shoulders. I was safe now. I didn't dare to think what Lucas and Sierra might have done to me if I had stayed, but in this lifetime, I wouldn't give them the chance. As for Sierra, her misfortune had only just begun. Only I knew the truth, that the grave she had just worshipped belonged to a stray dog. And not just that, I had poured manure on it, draining all the fortune she had hoped to steal. From now on, her life would be filled with bad luck and ruin. And Lucas, being with Sierra would only drag him down with her, which was why I needed to get far, far away from both of them. In the airport waiting room, I opened my phone and checked the social media updates from Sierra and Lucas. The two of them were planning a trip together. In the photo, their pose looked far too intimate to ignore. As I stared at the image, a wave of emotion passed through me. Confusion, maybe even bitterness. After all, it was just a year ago when I started dating Lucas. Back then, a classmate had dragged me to see a fortune teller, and by chance, Sierra and Lucas were also there. They overheard my birth chart, and shortly afterward, Lucas began to pursue me relentlessly. I didn't understand it at first, but eventually I realized the truth. He had taken a liking not to me, but to my birth chart. According to him, my birth chart was extremely fortunate. He got close to me, but it was all for Sierra's sake. Now, looking at the two of them smiling in that photo, I simply smiled to myself and locked my phone. When the plane landed, someone was already waiting for me. Everything had been arranged in advance. Since the organization I had joined was highly classified, security was top tier. Even at the check-in area, uniformed officers were patrolling the grounds. That sight instantly put me at ease. After completing my onboarding procedures, my supervisor informed me that I'd officially start work the following week. Until then, I was free to explore and get familiar with the environment. With everything in place, I finally allowed myself to relax. I went straight to bed that night. After a full day of traveling and arrangements, I was mentally and physically drained. The moment I lay down, I fell fast asleep. But then, in the middle of the night, my phone rang. Groggily, I answered it. Lucas's voice came through, sounding frantic. Ivana, come to the hospital. What? I asked, disoriented for a moment before recognizing the voice. Lucas, what's going on? Sierra and I were in a car accident. We're still in the hospital, please come quickly. His voice was laced with panic. I didn't miss a beat. Lucas, I'm sorry, I can't come. I found a job and I've already left the city. There was a long pause. Then his voice rose in disbelief. Ivana, what did you just say? You haven't found a job, how can you lie like that? I saw you yesterday. You're just upset because I went out with Sierra, aren't you? Stop being so stubborn, Ivana. Come here now. He practically roared the last sentence, but I only smiled faintly. Lucas, I did find a job, and I've also realized maybe you care about Sierra more than you care about me. So, Lucas, we're breaking up. I hung up without waiting for his response. It was over. It was over. From this point forward, it would be their turn to suffer. My fortune had finally returned. Just as I was about to fall back asleep, my phone lit up again. Lucas was calling. I frowned, stared at the screen for a moment, then powered the phone off. Finally, I could sleep peacefully. Over the next 2 weeks, I immersed myself in work. I gradually took on more responsibilities, and my superiors seemed especially pleased with my performance. They even hinted that if I completed the current project successfully, I would be given a solo project to lead. Naturally, that motivated me even more. In the days that followed, Lucas and Sierra wouldn't stop calling me. I ignored them at first, then blocked their numbers. I thought blocking them would be enough to keep them out of my life, but I underestimated their persistence. They began using different numbers to reach me. Every time I saw Lucas's name flash across the screen, I immediately declined the call. Then, one day a friend called me with news. Apparently, Sierra had been incredibly unlucky recently. The car accident had left her face seriously disfigured. She was still hospitalized, and she would need reconstructive surgery. Lucas hadn't escaped unscathed either. He'd broken a rib. But that wasn't all. Before the accident, Sierra had dragged him into a high-stakes gambling scheme. They lost everything. Now the two of them were drowning in debt. My friend who knew that I had broken up with Lucas sounded visibly relieved. Ivana, you have no idea. They got into the car crash right after arguing about the gambling losses. They're both borrowing money left and right now. And Ivana, if Lucas tries to beg you for help, don't fall for it. Remember how he acted when he was with you. He was still seeing Sierra every single day. I honestly don't know who he thought his girlfriend was. I listened silently before replying with a smile. I understand. Then I hung up. I had thought that even if Sierra's luck turned, it wouldn't happen so soon. But fate didn't wait. Hearing the news of their downfall filled me with satisfaction. Their troubles were just beginning. The next morning, I woke up to another phone call from Lucas. His voice sounded even more desperate than before. Ivana, come back. I really need you. I replied coldly. Lucas, have you forgotten? We've already broken up. There was a pause. Then his voice grew louder, more emotional. I never agreed to break up. I'm injured and you just want to leave me like this? How can you do that? You have to take responsibility for me. I sneered. You and Sierra got into this mess together. Why should I be responsible? Aren't you two doing perfectly fine together? I continued. My voice colder now. We're done, Lucas. Don't call me again. I was about to hang up when suddenly, Sierra's voice came through the line, shrill and accusing. Ivana. That grave? That wasn't your parents', was it? What did you do? My grip tightened around the phone. For a second, I said nothing. Then I laughed softly. Sierra, are you finally starting to figure things out? On the other end of the line, I heard her breathing grow uneven. Lucas sounded confused. What is she talking about? Sierra ignored him completely. Her voice trembled violently now. Ever since that day, everything started going wrong. The accident, the debt, the surgeries, the failed investments. You stole from the dead, I interrupted calmly. Did you really think there would be no consequences? Lucas immediately snapped, defensive as always. It was just some grave. Stop acting crazy. It wasn't just some grave, Sierra screamed at him. The line went silent. Then she whispered in horror, that cemetery, that date. Ivana, that was your family's memorial site, wasn't it? I leaned back against the couch, smiling faintly. Years ago, after my parents died, I bought a private memorial plot and personally designed every part of it. The jade bracelet Sierra stole during our visit hadn't belonged to me at all. It had been buried with my mother before Sierra secretly dug it up and took it for herself. And after that, her luck began. First came the money. Then came the attention. Then came Lucas. Fortune always demands payment eventually. I spoke slowly. You wanted a life that belonged to someone else. So fate let you borrow it for a while. Sierra let out a terrified sob. Lucas finally sounded uneasy too. Ivana, what are you saying? I ignored him. Sierra, do you remember what I told you at the graveyard? Her breathing hitched. Of course she remembered. That day, after catching her stealing from the memorial site, I had looked directly into her eyes and said, "If you take something from the dead, make sure you can afford the price." At the time, she laughed in my face. Now she was crying. Lucas suddenly exploded. "Sierra, what the hell did you do?" The two of them immediately started arguing over the phone. Accusations flew back and forth. Sierra blamed Lucas for pressuring her into gambling. Lucas blamed Sierra for ruining his life. Their voices grew louder and uglier with every second. I listened quietly for a moment before pulling the phone away from my ear. Pathetic. Then I ended the call. A week later, I heard Sierra had attempted suicide after learning the reconstructive surgery had failed. Her face would never fully recover. Lucas was worse off than before. Debt collectors were constantly chasing him. The company he worked for discovered he had secretly embezzled funds to cover gambling losses and fired him immediately. Not long after, I received one final message from an unknown number. "I was wrong. Please save me." I stared at the text for several seconds before calmly deleting it. Some debts can never be repaid, and some curses never end. Months later, I saw Lucas again by accident. He was standing outside a convenience store near midnight, thinner than I remembered, his clothes wrinkled and dirty. The proud, arrogant man who once mocked me for being too cold now looked like a starving stray dog. For a moment, he didn't recognize me. Then his eyes widened. "Ivana." His voice cracked instantly. He stumbled toward me desperately, grabbing my sleeve. "Please. Please help me just this once. They're after me. I have nowhere left to go." I slowly lowered my gaze to his trembling hand touching my coat. The same hand that once pushed me aside for Sierra. The same hand that signed loans in my name behind my back. The same hand that pointed at me after the crash and screamed that I was the selfish one. I smiled faintly. Then I peeled his fingers off me one by one. "You look terrible," I said softly. His face twisted with humiliation. "Ivana, I know I was wrong. I know it now. Sierra ruined everything. She lied to me. She manipulated me." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Lucas, nobody forced you to betray me. You did that all by yourself." He froze. I took a step closer and lowered my voice. "You know what's funny? You destroyed your own life chasing after stolen luck. And now that it's gone, you suddenly remember I existed." His eyes turned red. For a second, I thought he might cry. But before he could speak again, several men appeared across the street. Lucas's face instantly drained of blood. "Debt collectors." He panicked and grabbed my arm again. "Please, Ivana. Please tell them you know me. Just lend me enough to." I stepped back immediately. Then, right in front of him, I calmly adjusted my sleeve and said, "I don't know this man." Lucas stared at me in disbelief as the men dragged him away screaming. I watched the entire thing happen without blinking. The sound of his begging faded into the distance. And for the first time in years, I felt peaceful. As for Sierra, her ending was even uglier. After the failed surgeries, half her face remained permanently scarred. The online followers who once worshipped her beauty began mocking her mercilessly instead. Brands dropped her overnight. Her wealthy admirers disappeared even faster. But the worst part? The bad luck never stopped. Every investment failed. Every relationship collapsed. Every person around her eventually turned against her. It was as if her entire life had begun rotting from the inside out. One day, curiosity got the better of me, so I visited the cheap apartment building she now lived in. The hallways smelled like mold and cigarettes. When Sierra opened the door and saw me standing there, she went completely pale. She looked horrifying. Her hair was dry and falling out. One side of her face was warped from scar tissue. Her apartment behind her was filthy, filled with overdue bills and empty alcohol bottles. For several seconds, she just stared at me silently. Then suddenly, she dropped to her knees. "Ivana," she whispered hoarsely. "Please, tell me how to stop it." I looked down at her trembling body. This was the same woman who once smirked while stealing from the dead. The same woman who proudly took my boyfriend, my money, my peace. And now she couldn't even look me in the eyes. I smiled slowly. Then I reached into my purse and placed something in front of her. The jade bracelet. The very same one she stole from the grave. Sierra recoiled in terror the second she saw it. I don't want it, she screamed. Take it away. Her entire body shook violently. I crouched beside her and whispered, but you wanted it so badly before. Tears streamed down her ruined face. I stood up calmly. Then, before leaving, I gave her one final glance. Keep it, Sierra. After all, it matches you perfectly now. The next morning, news spread that Sierra had jumped from her apartment balcony in the middle of the night. Some people said it was guilt. Others said madness. Personally, I think fate simply came to collect what it was owed.